I'm joined now by Congressman Daniel Goldman. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian.
So we have some recent news here that Mike Johnson has removed Mike Turner as chair of the House Intel Committee. You don't sit on that committee, but you're still in the House with him. Why do you presume that was?
Well, it's actually really, really disconcerting because Mike Turner was a true professional, is a true professional, is a true intelligence-oriented member, and he was, put the intelligence first, put the country first. Was a supporter of Ukraine aid, a supporter of NATO, understands in the traditional Republican way how important alliances are, how important our intelligence community is. And the fact that he would be removed at the pressure from Donald Trump and the far right wing of the Republican Party just goes to show you how much control Donald Trump has. And we know that Donald Trump has historically politicized intelligence information, and that Mike Turner might have been an obstacle to him doing that. And that's why he wanted him out. So this is yet another step for Donald Trump to use our independent executive branch agencies that are apolitical, that are non-political, for his own political purposes.
I want to turn your attention to a clip from Jamie Raskin.
Look, he's been pro-Ukraine. He's voted with the Democrats for aid to Ukraine. He was a great mayor of Dayton who had a real bipartisan history and base of support. And after the terrible gun violence that took place in Dayton, he came out for an assault weapon ban. He's someone who's extremely popular with Democrats. Who knows what's going to happen at this point, but that's a terrible affront and indignity to a guy who had at least one more term as chair of the Intelligence Committee, and to have the Republican Party just turn their backs on him like that and disown him is a major rupture in the political fabric of the House of Representatives.
So is there a world in which Mike Turner is actually primed to switch parties here?
I don't know. I think it's unlikely. I think Mike Turner is a true conservative Republican. And what has happened is he is not leaving the Republican Party. In many ways, the Republican Party is leaving him. We welcome him, of course. We appreciate somebody who puts country over party, which Mike Turner has done. But I'm not counting my chickens or holding my breath that he's going to switch parties.
Yeah.
But he has a lot of power in the Republican Party as it is, where they only have a 2-seat majority right now. If Mike Turner has been ostracized from party leadership and from the party generally, and he remains in the House, then he will be an independent voter, and he should be an independent voter. And that will not always be consistent with what Mike Johnson wants to do. And so Mike Turner, even if he does not switch parties, can have a significant impact on what happens in the House.
To that point, in terms of what happens in the House, I'm obviously coming to you from Los Angeles. Right now, the wildfires are still raging. It's been the better part of a week now. Mike Johnson and other members of the House have come out and begun to express support for conditioning aid to California here in exchange for kind of exacting political concessions out of Democrats. What do you think the likelihood of that happening would be?
I hope the likelihood is zero. I think this would be an awful precedent. It's never happened before. The Congress, the presidency, we represent all Americans, regardless of party. And when Americans are in need after a natural disaster, it is our job to come to their rescue and to relieve them and to support them, regardless of party. And that just happened, Brian, not too long ago. In December, we passed $100 billion of natural disaster relief aid for FEMA, for Florida, for Western North Carolina, and many other Republican areas. And you didn't hear any Democrats say, oh, well, if you're going to help Republicans recover from a natural disaster, then we need to exact some sort of concession. Of course not. And that's how it should be. And let's not forget, Hurricane Katrina was in Louisiana, Mike Johnson
Right.
and Steve Scalise's state. So this is a dangerous road for them to go down. And I strongly urge them to not do this.
Well, this is hit close to home, literally and figuratively for me. And I think that that's the part that really is the most striking. But when I think about, okay, yes, this is a dangerous road to go down because it would establish the precedent of conditioning aid. And not only is Mike Johnson himself from Louisiana, but most of these states that are in the path of hurricanes over and over and over again are red states. We're looking at, again, Louisiana. We're looking at Mississippi, Texas, Florida, Tennessee. And so there's that idea of starting basically a war back and forth where both sides are trying to exact concessions. But the reality is that Democrats aren't going to do that because they're not looking to kick people while they're down. They're looking to extract concessions out of people while they're at a point where they've lost everything. So can you talk about that asymmetry here, where in a way, the sad reality is that Republicans know full well that they will be successful staving off any type of battle back and forth because Democrats aren't the kind of people who would or ever have tried to condition relief aid for people.
Right. Well, first, I should have mentioned that all of us are thinking about you and everyone else in Los Angeles. It is absolutely horrific to see what's going on. And I am sure that we will be there to help Los Angeles recover once these fires are finally extinguished. But you raise a good point. I would even add the hypocrisy goes so much further because this is the true political weaponization of the federal government. Donald Trump did this or tried to do this in his first term. He also did this with Puerto Rico in his first term. And the notion that the Republicans have been alleging that Joe Biden for 4 years has, quote, weaponized the federal government is a complete farce. And it's both projection, because that's what they do, but it's also an element of distraction and gaslighting and normalizing the behavior that they use. And you're right. I will never vote to condition aid for natural disasters. But there is a cost to them doing it. And it may not be that there's a tit for tat, but the American people understand what kind of venal, partisan, really gross behavior that is. And there are many Americans, Republican and Democrat, who have suffered from natural disasters. And if they see that a natural disaster relief package is conditioned on concessions because the state where that you're helping is a blue state, they're not going to like that. And there will be consequences at the ballot box. So I'm happy standing up for what's right, even if there is no tit for tat. We will do what is right for the American people, not for the Democratic Party. And at some point soon, that is going to win the day.
Now, switching gears a little bit here, you have urged Merrick Garland to drop the case, to have the DOJ drop the case into Donald Trump's co-defendants. That's Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah. So in Jack Smith's cover letter to his report, he says that Volume 2, the classified documents volume, should not be released until those cases against Donald Trump's lackeys who helped him obstruct justice and conceal the classified documents, cases are over. Trump's case was dismissed because he's becoming president. He, of course, was the central defendant who was charged with the most serious crimes of retaining and concealing classified information. But the others' cases still go on because they're not president, so they're not above the law. Donald Trump unquestionably will make those cases go away as of Monday at noon when he takes over the presidency. There is no chance that he will ever let those cases go to trial when that trial would reveal his own misconduct. And the fact that he would dismiss those cases or pardon those defendants is disgusting. It's a conflict of interest. It's abuse of power. It's using the presidency for his own personal good. But he's not afraid to do that. We know he will do that. And so as soon as those cases go away, there's no reason not to turn over, not to release the classified documents volume of special counsel Jack Smith's report. But if Donald Trump does that, he's never going to release the report about his own misconduct. Let's be real. We're never going to see that report. Now, remember that the special counsel has stated in court documents that the evidence will include why Donald Trump retained and concealed that classified information and what he intended to do with it. Don't you think it is in the public interest to know what our future and soon-to-be commander-in-chief intended to do with our most sensitive classified secrets? And so the public interest of releasing the report far outweighs the public interest in continuing these prosecutions for 3 more days until Donald Trump gets rid of them. And because, based on Judge Cannon's opinion, based on Jack Smith's recommendation, based on the Department of Justice, policies and procedures, it can't be released until those cases are over. He should make those cases over because they're going to end anyway, and it's the only way to release the volume 2, which is critical for the American people to read.
With that said, knowing full well that there won't be accountability in federal court for Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, is there any ongoing state prosecution, or could there be any state prosecution based on what may be released if Jack Smith ultimately does decide to release the report?
Well, I don't know exactly what the evidence is. Retaining federal national security information is a federal crime. It's not a state crime. I don't think there would be a state crime. Plus, it's Florida. It's it's going to be hard to find some prosecutor.
A state prosecutor, a state attorney who's willing to buck what Ron DeSantis is willing to do, especially knowing full well that Ron DeSantis has a background of removing people who engage in prosecution that he doesn't like.
Exactly. But I will add one other thing that's important about Volume 2, which is one of the reasons why Donald Trump's lawyers, who will soon become senior officials of the Department of Justice and will have to immediately recuse themselves from anything having to do with the special counsel, but they made an argument that one of the reasons not to release the report is because it would impugn nominees who may assume high positions in Donald Trump's administration. Now, we know that Kash Patel, who has been nominated to be the FBI director, testified in the grand jury. And that information related to Kash Patel is very necessary for the Senate Judiciary Committee to review in order to be able to evaluate whether or not he is qualified, fit, and competent to become the FBI director. So I hope and expect that the Senate Judiciary Committee will demand to see Volume 2, to see his grand jury testimony, to understand what the evidence is related to Kash Patel's involvement in Donald Trump's criminal efforts to conceal classified and national secrets.
Do you have any indication as to whether Merrick Garland is feeling pressure to release this report? Is this drumbeat building up from within the House and your other colleagues in the Senate, on the Senate side? Do you have any indication as to whether this is going to be released?
Well, I know he's been feeling some pressure, and to date he has not done it. So I don't know what he's going to do. There's a hearing today to evaluate a temporary injunction. The Attorney General has asked to show the report to the chairman and ranking members of the Senate and House Judiciary Committees. As a member of the House, that is wholly unsatisfactory to look at that.
Yeah.
A room where you cannot talk about it, you cannot remove it. It's also dangerous, to only have a select few people who have seen it, and there are already threats against people who may, against the senior officials of senior members of these committees who may see it about leaks. It's irresponsible, and it's insufficient. And so that's part of the reason why we wrote this letter, is that what the Attorney General is asking for in the hearing today is inadequate. And really the only thing that is the proper thing to do here is to do everything possible to ensure that Volume 2 is released. And we know it won't be released after Monday at noon. So
Right.
The Attorney General needs to take every measure possible in order to get it released before that.
Well, we'll leave it there, Congressman. I appreciate you being a leader on this issue, and I'll, add in insofar as I can, mine to the chorus of voices who are calling for this report's release. Congressman Goldman, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Brian.